I'm Dwayne Brown. Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, baseball's All-Stars will play ball at Petco Park next year, what the big game will mean for San Diego's economy.
And I'm Peggy Pico with reaction from San Diego City Council on the mayor's promises in his first State of the City address. Then a preview of the 8,000 square foot interactive Coast to Cactus exhibition opening this weekend at the San Diego Natural History Museum.
And unpredictable wildlife may be delaying a $3 million city construction project at La Jolla Cove. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Hi, good evening. Thanks for joining us. Major League Baseball's All-Star Game is coming to San Diego next year. The Padres announced it today on the team's official Twitter feed. The team lobbied hard to bring the Midsummer Classic to Petco Park, and the city helped out by approving $1.5 million in fee waivers. San Diego's Tourism Authority says the game could be worth $80 million to the region. Petco beat out Baltimore's Camden Yards for the game. Now, the last time the All-Star Game was held here was back in 1992 when the Padres were still playing at Jack Murphy Stadium. Of course, we call it Qualcomm today. Now, Mayor Kevin Faulconer says the game is a great opportunity for San Diego to be on the world stage, and he says the event is about more than just the game.
I mean, you have the Home Run Derby the day before, you have the Fan Fest, so there's just going to be a lot of opportunities to just, hey, enjoy our national pastime.
The city expects to collect $2.5 million in hotel and sales taxes from the game, $1 million more than it waived in permit fees for Major League Baseball. Faulconer says the money will help pave more streets and hire more cops. He also says the All-Star deal reinforces efforts to build a new stadium for the Chargers. The stadium was just one of the priorities the mayor laid out last night in his State of the City address. KPBS Metro reporter Taryn Mento was there and brings us the highlights. Taryn, what new ideas did the mayor unveil in his speech?
Dwayne, the mayor shared plans for street repair, job growth, and economic development with Tijuana. As expected, he also commented on two big projects, a new Charger stadium and the convention center expansion. But some said his plan wasn't much of a plan at all.
I am assembling a group of civic leaders to recommend a location and develop a viable financing plan. They will explore all possibilities to finance this project, and they will be charged with studying two different options: building a stadium at the current Mission Valley location, or building a stadium along with an expanded convention center in downtown San Diego.
Now, wait a minute, that sounds a little bit familiar.
Yes, very. San Diegans have seen task forces study these issues before. A Chargers task force in 2002 and a convention center task force in 2009. So people seem skeptical. But the mayor did say he wants a plan by the fall and that San Diegans will have the final say with a vote. So we'll be following that as it moves along.
And Taryn, you mentioned road repair and job creation. What are his plans for that?
Right. The mayor set an ambitious goal of paving 1,000 miles of city streets over the next 5 years. He said fixing streets is his #1 infrastructure priority, but the details weren't immediately clear. And as for job creation, he proposed creating another group to study that issue and share solutions within 6 months.
I'm assembling a group of San Diego employers, educators, innovators, and workforce experts to connect San Diegans to the opportunities that exist in our own backyard.
So it looks like we'll be checking back on that this summer. KPBS Metro reporter Taryn Mento. Peggy Pico gets reaction to the mayor's first State of the City address from District 5's council member and the council president.
San Diego Council President Sherry Leitner and Council Member Mark Kersey, thanks very much for joining us. Now, Sherry,
thank you for having us.
You got it. Now, Sherry, one of the major big announcements that the mayor said last night was this plan to have a task force for building the Charger Stadium. But he also said about this possibility of financing it with a fair deal to San Diego taxpayers. Do you support a taxpayer-funded stadium?
This is something that the voters would have to decide upon. Personally, I know how important the Chargers are, and we need to keep them. And as I said just a little bit ago, you know on Monday morning how the Chargers did on Sunday. And it affects our quality of life and our interactions here at the city. I do look forward to seeing what the task force results are. And after that, I think it's timed perfectly to take something to the ballot.
Mark, during his campaign, Mayor Faulconer said that he was opposed to using taxpayer money to build a new Charger Stadium. Why has that changed?
Well, I'm not sure it has changed. I think it depends on how you're looking at this deal. The city obviously has a lot of land at the current Mission Valley site that could be leveraged, over 100 acres. We've got other properties that potentially can be leveraged as well. You've got different ways that you could structure the deal, including things like ticket surcharges, parking surcharges, personal seat licenses. So it's more of a user paid construction rather than coming out of tax dollars specifically. So I think that's more what he's talking about. And you also have to remember that right now the city's general fund subsidizes the current Qualcomm Stadium over $10 million a year.
So there is some subsidy there. Moving on to a few other things in the speech, twice during the mayor's address last night, he spoke in Spanish, and Tijuana's mayor was in the audience. The two have signed a cooperative agreement back in November. As chair and vice chair of the Economic Development and Intergovernmental Relations Committee, I'll start with you, Sherry. What do you want to come out of this agreement?
Well, right now they're starting with having the department directors work together. I think that with us being so close to the border, this is something that we've been both of us have been working on for a long time, is to have the region be the region for all innovation and manufacturing in the world. And I think it's an opportunity. The time has come, and with the reduced wait times at the border, there's still a lot we can do, but San Diego is uniquely poised with all our ports. We need to take advantage of our relationship with Mexico, with Tijuana, Tecate, and Ensenada in particular. And we're all Californians.
Let me ask Mark that specifically. Do you see one or two areas that would specifically benefit from this in San Diego, from this agreement?
Well, I think that there's a number of ways that we can work together on things such as infrastructure, putting together joint economic development agreements. I think there are definitely ways that we can build on the foundation of that MOU that the mayors both signed back in November.
Well, speaking of infrastructure, ambitious promise by Mayor Faulconer last night, 1,000 miles of San Diego streets over the next 5 years. With an estimated cost of upwards of $2 billion needed for these infrastructures and repairs. He promised, I think, 100,000, I think, last night. We know about this $120 million bond measure to pay for this. I'll start with you, Mark. Where do you get the rest of the money?
Well, it all comes back to infrastructure, doesn't it? This is something that I think is the biggest priority for the City Council and for the Mayor. I think this is the biggest issue facing the city today, is infrastructure and how we're going to invest in these projects. We know that we've got a multi-billion-dollar backlog of both deferred maintenance and projects that neighborhoods want to see. And we've got a variety of ways of coming up with that money, and one of them is the lease revenue bonding that you mentioned. Also dedicating more money out of the general fund. The mayor said that he wants to devote half of every new general fund dollar that comes in to infrastructure. And Sherry, we need to see that.
Right, you're nodding your head with that. Are there any other sources of revenue that you can think of, or does it remain to be seen?
I know that the IBA has presented a lot of information on our deferred maintenance and the infrastructure needs and what we may need to be doing. I think what's very important is Mark is going to have at his committee next week is the 5-year plan for the capital improvement projects and addressing our deferred maintenance needs. We need to get a number. We still have a number of outstanding assessments that need to be done, and until we have a number, it's really hard to speculate on what you're going to do going forward. I do believe we've tapped out. We're getting close to tapping out the lease revenue, but we have seen other models for how to finance infrastructure improvements, and it will require some evaluation.
And briefly, we need to end on this. The Charter Review Committee met for the first time today.
Why is this?
Today. Right. And so why is it important? to the city to have this charter review committee?
It is something that we've been working on for a couple years now with the clerk's office and city attorney's office. We know the city attorney has had to harmonize the charter sections numerous times. Plus, we had the concern when Mayor Filmer was in office as to how you remove a mayor or conceivably a city attorney or even a city council member for conceivably even being incapacitated.
Sure,
so
lots of reasons for that. And
redistricting,
actually,
we have a whole
lots of
slew
reasons.
of things.
The public is invited to participate. They can find more out about
we
that on our
want a plain
website.
talk charter.
Sure, there we go.
21st century.
Okay, Council President Sherry Leitner and Councilman Mark Kersey, thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Peggy.
A San Diego consumer group is asking state regulators for more financial oversight of the $4.4 billion set aside to decommission the San Onofre nuclear plant in the North County. Citizens Oversight Project filed a legal complaint today with the State Public Utilities Commission. The consumer group says school construction bonds get more review than the plant's shutdown. A military contractor has pleaded guilty to bribing Navy officers to have them steer business to his company in ports overseas. Leonard Glenn Francis, known as Fat Leonard, faces up to 25 years in prison. The Navy says his bribery scheme may have cost taxpayers $20 million. 2 Navy commanders and a petty officer have also pleaded guilty in the case. A captain is still fighting the charges. Hoping to help immigrants who want to live in the U.S. legally, the Mexican government is now issuing birth certificates in its consulates here in the U.S. Until now, Mexico required citizens to get birth certificates in Mexico. Under President Obama's executive action on immigration, about 3 million people could be eligible. Yesterday, Congress voted to overturn the president's plan. That bill now heads to the Senate. There's new numbers out on San Diego's immigrant population, about 181,000 people living in the county illegally. A report from the Migration Policy Institute says half could qualify for the president's executive action. San Diego ranks 7th among counties with the highest numbers of people eligible to stay legally under the president's immigration plans. Health officials have confirmed 6 more cases of measles tied to an outbreak last month at Disney theme parks in Anaheim. One of those new cases is right here in San Diego. The total number of patients is up to 32. Meanwhile, County Health Department is waiting on test results on 5 people who showed up with fevers yesterday at a health clinic in La Mesa. The Sharp Reese-Steely Urgent Care Center closed for 6 hours, but later reopened. San Diego's Public Works Department says unpredictable wildlife is one reason a new lifeguard tower is behind schedule at La Jolla Cove and the children's pool. They say the work had to be stopped quite a few times because of the noise. It was disturbing harbor seals. They were also delayed when a seagull chick hatched on the site. The city tells the La Jolla Light the animals weren't the only problem. There was also trouble with some building materials and design flaws. Work on the tower's exterior was supposed to be finished by the start of seal pupping season. Now it's on hold while the seals have their babies. San Diego's Port Commission has voted to take the next step toward putting a giant Ferris wheel on the waterfront. It will be a topic of discussion at their February 10th meeting. KPBS reporter Eric Anderson gives us a look at the proposal.
The huge tourist attraction could be built beside 2 notable landmarks, the Midway Aircraft Museum and the KISS statue. But developers are suggesting this spit of land, known as the G Street Mole, become home to a giant Ferris wheel. Wayne Thorne is visiting from Canada, and he's not immediately sold.
The area is beautiful the way it is, and that may just look a little industrial. So my first thought on it is that I probably wouldn't want to see it.
But backer David Melmoth is pushing the $200 million project. He told a room of designers at the San Diego New School of Architecture and Design that the wheel could become part of a complex weave of visitor experiences along the waterfront. He wants the Port of San Diego to consider the idea before settling on a harborside master plan.
Well, either they could decide that they're going to have a competition for other proposals on the G Street Mole, or they could potentially say, we love this idea, we want to work with you exclusively, which we think is highly unlikely. or they could have some other method of evaluating this proposal and other proposals that are being made that are somewhat similar to ours.
San Diego resident Edward Eastland said the project to remake the G Street Mall seems to be pretty fully formed, and that makes him a bit uncomfortable.
They should have a competition so that other ideas can be explored, the public can be involved so that the public is just not shut out. And my understanding is, too, they've got a whole team all set up, and they talk about using San Diego's artistic talent and so on, but then they choose an architect out of town.
Malmuth says a preliminary economic analysis finds the project could generate $60 to $70 million of revenue each year. The port share will be about $3 million. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
Oh my gosh, I love this song.
Everything is awesome. Everything's cool when we're part of the team.
The Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences also loved this song from the Lego movie, nominating it for a Best Song Oscar, but the movie itself, well, got snubbed in the Best Animated Feature category. Our own cinema junkie Beth Accomando has more on what made the Oscar cut and what didn't.
The Lego movie got snubbed, but at least it had a chance to compete. The Australian film The Babadook won accolades for its lead actress Essie Davis, but the film was deemed ineligible because it was released through video on demand before opening in theaters. The Academy rules still require a film to play theatrically for 7 days in Los Angeles to be up for consideration. The exclusion of this film may open discussion about amending the rules as film distribution platforms change in the digital age. But the films that did rack up the most nominations were surprisingly independent. Wes Anderson's The Grand Budapest Hotel garnered 9 nominations, including Best Picture, Director, and Original Screenplay, while Birdman's 9 nominations included ones for director Alejandro G. Iñárritu and actor Michael Keaton. A few years back, the Academy expanded its Best Picture category so that up to 10 films could be nominated. The hope was that a more diverse selection of films would be represented, including pop entertainment movies. This year, Marvel delivered 2 box office hits that also won critical praise. But Guardians of the Galaxy and Captain America: The Winter Soldier were shut out of the Best Picture category and only nabbed a trio of effects nominations. For a different take on the best of the year, you can check out my Cinema Junkie Awards at kpbs.org/cinemajunkie. Beth Accomando, KPBS News.
A Las Vegas oddsmaker says Boyhood is the favorite to win the Academy Award for Best Picture, but you can't bet on the Oscars in Nevada. It's against the law, at least for now. Officials there are considering a proposal to allow betting on the Oscars and the Olympics. International sports books already allow those bets. A new permanent exhibit exploring Southern California's immense biodiversity opens Saturday at the San Diego Natural History Museum. Peggy Pico has a preview.
The 8,000 square foot Coast to Cactus exhibition offers exploration of our region's exceptional ecosystems in a hands-on way. Joining me with highlights are my guest, Michael Hager, President and CEO of the San Diego Natural History Museum, and Erica Kelly, the exhibition's developer. And Michael, you've said Southern California is one of 35 global biodiversity hotspots. What makes our region so biodiverse?
Well, first of all, our topography plays a big role in that. We have a cool Japanese current just off the coast, keeping us a little cooler in the summer than inland. We've got a mountain range not far away that blocks and keeps moisture on this side, a rain shadow desert on the other, and streams that dissect our mesa tops, which give each canyon a unique habitat. So that allows for a great diversity of plants and animals.
A big species, a big diversity in species and
Sure.
animals. Eric, Coast to Cactus is a permanent exhibition at the Nat and part of the 2015 Balboa Park Centennial Celebration. Walk us through this $9 million, I understand, exhibition.
Sure, yeah. Well, it's when you first walk up to it, the first thing that you'll see welcoming you is a touchable relief map of all of Southern California. So you can start to get a glimpse in miniature of this diversity of topography that Dr. Hager is talking about and the region that we're talking about. And there will also be Mama Grizzly Bear and her cubs welcoming you And she is sort of setting the stage for one of our main through lines, which is this idea of change over time, because of course we don't have grizzlies in California anymore. And then you walk in and you can have your choice of habitats from the coast to the Torrey Pines to the desert to the mountains, and just take your pick and explore.
And it's very interactive. Tell us if you could highlight a few of the interactive pieces to this exhibition as you're walking through it.
Sure. Well, one of our favorites in our desert and habitat zone is you step behind this Airstream trailer, kind of not knowing what you're going to find, and you're immersed in what it would be like to go on a virtual camping trip in the desert under the stars. And you hear and see all the sounds of the desert through the voices of two young campers who are in a virtual tent in front of you, and you kind of go on a camping trip with them and get to know kind of what happens in the desert at night when the sun goes down and everything comes out.
And Michael, how has our region's biodiversity, from animals to plants and maybe even erosion, how have things changed in the many years since this exhibition is covering?
Well, humans pose a challenge to the environment, but I'm pleased to say that San Diego has led the world in setting aside lands, multiple species conservation planning areas, that connect habitat so that you have, because the biggest threat to species is habitat loss, and particularly unconnected habitat. So if you can go from one to the next, it allows greater conservation value. So it's changed, and we hope that this exhibition will inspire people to take these things into consideration as we continue to expand.
And Erica, how does the exhibition handle the devastating firestorms of 2003 and 2007 and our current drought situations, maybe not so positive changes?
So drought is interesting because water and the absence of water and the presence of water is, of course, part of the California story. We're in a period of drought right now, and then there are times when we're not and we have rain. But what's interesting is all of the species that live here have had to figure out how to live in those circumstances anyway. So we look at some interesting plant adaptations for figuring out how to get water when there isn't any. One of my favorites actually is our Torrey pine, which, in addition to being the rarest pine tree in North America, has these exceptionally long needles. And those needles are actually harvesting the fog from the air so that the Torrey pine is actually raining on its roots.
That's a great example. Aside from comfort, Michael, some may ask, why should we go to this exhibit when we can go just touch a Torrey pine ourselves or go down to a canyon ourselves and experience the region's nature personally? What does the exhibit offer that maybe you wouldn't get on your own?
Well, I like to think of this as the visitor center for the region. So you can see the prehistoric past in the Fossil Mysteries exhibit from our region. You can visit all of the habitats in a single afternoon right within the museum. And I think there are individual stories about why Torrey pines are important, or why habitat preservation, or where our water comes from, or what climate change is doing. So you get to see it all in one place. We hope then people will go out and explore and have more questions.
First stop shopping then.
Yeah, and have more questions and come back and visit our website.
All right. Michael Haker and Erica Kelly, thank you so much for joining us. And I want to let folks know that Coast to Cactus in Southern California opens this Saturday at the San Diego Natural History Museum in Balboa Park. For more information, go to kpbs.org.
This word just in, Pope Francis says he will canonize Father Junipero Serra during a visit to the U.S. in September. Serra founded the Mission San Diego in the 18th century. Canonization makes him a saint.
I'm Gwen Eiffel. On the next News Hour, we take you for a ride in a driverless car. That's Thursday on the PBS News Hour.
Look at here, San Diegans used less water last month, 29% less. Governor Brown wants to see at least a 20% reduction. The County Water Authority says folks took advantage of the rain we got and turned off their sprinklers. Most of California is still in exceptional drought, though, and the state forecasters expect that to last at least until April, but state water managers say they will be able to send some water to local agencies because of the December rains. They say it will be only 15% of what was requested. No rain in our forecast. Our weekend looking pretty good, filled with lots of sun and warmer temperatures. 70s along the coast with a chance for some clouds by Sunday. Upper 70s in the inland valleys. A slight warm up in the mountain areas, getting into the 60s towards the end of the weekend. Desert temperatures mostly in the mid 70s and lows in the mid 40s overnight. Let's recap our top stories tonight. Baseball's All-Star game will be played here in San Diego next summer. Now, the Padres put the word out on Twitter today. The 2016 All-Star Game will be played at Petco Park. The team lobbied hard to get the game and beat out Baltimore's Camden Yards. City officials say the All-Star Game will create about $80 million in economic activity for the region. And the military contractor has pleaded guilty to bribing Navy officers to have them steer business to his company in ports overseas. Leonard Glenn Francis, known as Fat Leonard, faces up to 25 years in prison. The Navy says his bribery scheme may have cost taxpayers $20 million. 2 Navy commanders and a petty officer have also pleaded guilty in the case. A captain is still fighting the charges. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.